2018's best horror movies, and it's not horrific, but it is very, very scary. So get your crystals, get your holy water, maybe some Florida water and some sage, because you're definitely going to need it for today. So as we discussed, the lore behind Hereditary, the movie from 2018. So my intention to take this explanation is to go from an explanation and a short synopsis of the movie to talk about King Solomon, because I have to talk about King Solomon, and King Payman, who is what the actual movie is about. So if we start with the beginning part of the movie and give a short synopsis, it is about the Graham family, and they actually just had experienced Annie's mother dying, as they refer to her as the matriarch of the family. The scenes open up with them going to her funeral. They have a few siblings. There's a few of them. It is Peter, Charlie. Those are the two kids. Charlie's the daughter. Peter is the son. Their father, Dr. Stephen Graham. Him being a doctor literally has nothing to do with the entirety of the movie. And Annie, the main character. We find a lot of stuff going on with Annie and her mom dying. So they're all at the funeral, and Annie gives this like amazing speech that really sets the whole pace of the relationship that they had and why things kind of went wrong. And she's making these comments along the lines of, she is surprised to see all these people here. Her mom had secret rituals. Her mom had secret friends and did secret things that she didn't know anything about. And she's not heartbroken over her mother passing because of how strained their relationship is. We later come to find out with Annie's relationship with her mother why it's so strained in a scene when Annie is at a grief counseling group after her mother passes. And she makes a comment that her father had died of starvation. They were also under the impression that he had a mental disability, allegedly, right? And her brother hung himself in her mother's room and said that she was putting souls into his body, putting spirits into his body, which is very important for later on. And there's a number of people there at the support group, which is coincidental. And, you have these scenes that kind of pass on, and then once they get home and, I think a week goes by, and the brother Peter decides to go to a high school party, and the mother Annie is just kind of like, bring your sister, there's going to be drinking there. And he's like, I'm not planning on drinking because he's a pothead. So just an FYI. And she's like, I'm not planning on drinking. And she's like, bring your sister anyway. And Charlie had no desire to go, but she was forced to go. We have scenes right after the party where Charlie has a nut allergy. She has an allergic reaction, and Peter has to take her out of the party, and she's in the car, and she sticks her head out the window because she's trying to get more air, and unfortunately she gets decapitated. And you have these scenes of how the family unravels so severely after this, and it's really kind of sad in such a horrific way. So Annie then, I guess maybe after a month, I think it is, she goes back to this support group. She doesn't go inside, and a woman named Joan, and I'm kind of glossing over the synopsis of this movie because in order to talk about King Payman, who the movie is about, I'll give more details and things that happen within the movie outside of that. So she meets a woman named Joan, and Joan is outside, and she's like, oh, are you coming into this meeting? And Annie's like, no, I forgot something. And Joan's like, well, my son and my grandson drowned. That's why I'm here. And Annie's like, holy cow. And Joan says something along the lines of like, it seems like everybody needs someone to talk to. And I know you don't think that you need someone, but I'm around. So that's how their relationship starts. We later find out that Joan actually did know Ellen, who is Annie's mom, that passed away in the beginning. They're part of the same triangle. They're part of the same triangle. They're part of the same triangle, I should say. And There's other little scenes that kind of play out to where things start really, really unraveling. There's a number of scenes where Joan convinces her to go to the seance because she wants to see her grandson again. She allegedly is in communication with her grandson during this seance that she has. So that convinces Annie that seances are real and that she's a medium, as she says later on. She's like, I'm a medium, I've been seeing apparitions, because throughout the movie, Annie does see her mother, and she's been hearing weird sounds. There's little sounds like going on throughout the movie, so she's been hearing that. She's been getting weird feelings, so she, likes to acknowledge that she at some point acknowledges that she's a medium. So what ends up happening after that? So Annie then has this seance by herself, and then she goes and she gets her son and her husband and goes to do the seance, and then she later figures out that she actually didn't call her daughter Charlie, who passed from being decapitated. She actually called a demon, and she tries to do all these things, and unfortunately the whole family dies. Sorry guys, spoiler. The father catches on fire during a scene. Annie does this whole thing. At one point she becomes possessed by this particular demon, Payman, and it's crazy. She starts like chasing Peter around the house, and Peter locks himself in the attic at some point without realizing that there's candles all around him, and there's like naked people in the attic, and there's also like a dead body in the attic. So he ends up jumping out the window and dies, and then Payman goes into his body, and there's a whole scene with Joan where she's like, give us good familiars and good X, Y, and Z. So while all of this stuff is happening, I'm sure you're questioning, who is King Payman, and why is there so much lore based on this movie with him? So in order to talk about King Payman, I have to talk about a guy named King Solomon. Now, I just want to make sure I say, in no way am I intending to offend anybody with a Judeo-Christian religion, Islamic religion, Muslim, and there's two other religions that believe that have King David and King Solomon within their lore, and I'm drawing a blank right now. But King Solomon, so to give background on King Solomon, because this is actually very, very important in relation to the movie. King Solomon was the last king of Israel. He was appointed the king during a time period when he was 15, might I add, when he was 15, and his father was very, very sick. He also had two brothers that coincidentally died that were in line for the throne above him, but the father said that Solomon was so wise and that he wanted him to be the king of Israel, and he became the last king of Israel. King Solomon is known to be one of the richest people during that time, where his worth was estimated in the trillions at that time, so you could imagine how wealthy this man was. There's also a lot of lore that talks about King Solomon having everything in gold. He only drank out of gold cups. He only did things with gold because that was his thing, because he just had so much money. So to talk a little bit more about King Solomon, as some people might know, is very heavy within the mythology of certain religions. And one of the most important things I think about King Solomon is that he's known to be King Solomon the Wise. And he was given allegedly his wiseness from God directly. God asked him, and this is before, this is in like 700 or 750 BCE, I believe. So before Christ. And, ooh, I almost choked. And so God came down to King Solomon, and he's like, I'll grant you any wish you would like. Let me know what it is that you would like, wish-wise. And King Solomon asked for something along the lines of patience and understanding, not only the people around him, but his enemies as well. And God was very happy that he asked this instead of asking for riches. So he said, I'm going to give you exactly what you asked for, and I'm going to also make sure that you're rich and your people around you are rich as well. So you see, for a number of years, there's a lot of wealth that is going on within King Solomon's reign. There's a lot of expeditions that they have that involve gold mines. There's a lot of a lot of different things that go on within the mythology of King Solomon. And during this time span, one of the most like infamous stories of King Solomon's wiseness comes about, which is the story of the two moms who were claiming the baby. And a short synopsis, he says to cut the baby in half, and the mother was like, "That's my kid, no," like give it to the other woman. I don't want this baby cut in half. And that was the indication of her actually being the mother of the child, which is interesting. I don't think an average person would want a baby cut in half, but that's, anyway, neither here nor there. It's a parable for a reason, right? And so King Solomon is known to be wise, and he accumulates his wealth because he is so wise that people from different places come and bring him horses. They bring little trinkets of gold. They bring him women. They bring him women just so they can get some information basically and be with him and be in his presence. So that's part of how he accumulates his wealth, from his wiseness, and along with the mining expeditions and things of that nature. So to kind of go back on the comment that I just made about people bringing him women, there is two schools of thought when it comes to the amount of women that he had in his life. I read somewhere that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, which are a form of a mistress. And that means he has 1,000 women, which kind of sounds exhausting if we are to be completely honest with each other. And I also found another piece of information that goes along with the lines of him having 300 wives and 200 concubines. 500 total ladies, which also sounds extremely exhausting. But that seems a little bit more believable in the context of mythology as opposed to 1,000. But who really knows how many women he was being given and how many women were with him. And so during this time period of him having all these wives and being so wise, he never told his wives to start practicing his religion or start practicing his stuff. He felt so secure within his religion that he let his wives and his concubines practice their own religion, which I think says a lot about the wiseness of him. And, if you believe so strongly your religion, it shouldn't make a difference what anybody else thinks or feels, and you shouldn't be offended by other people practicing. And he was very much of that mindset. He even built gold temples for his mistresses, I should say concubines, because that's their term, for his concubines and for his wives, because he wanted them to feel safe and secure practicing with whatever their religion was, which is very interesting. We later find out throughout the lore that King Solomon, one of his wives, was a pagan, and I'm using that term very loosely, was a pagan, and she believed in different forms of deities, and she was the one who got him into the second half of his life. And he started practicing what was perceived and is still perceived as pagan mythology and pagan ideology. God was very unhappy about this, and he caused a lot of floods to happen and a lot of issues to happen throughout King Solomon's reign towards the end of it, because he felt it was such a, I can't put words in anybody else's mouth, but it alludes to this wrathfulness of God and this offense that Solomon started practicing other ideologies outside of Judeo-Christian beliefs. So that kind of takes us to the beginning of King Solomon as he relates to the occult mythology. We later find and have a number of sources that talk about King Solomon being so wise that he was able to conjure spirits, and at one point he was able to classify 72 demons. He was able to give them different classifications. Some had gold crowns, silver crowns, some were queens, some were knights, and things of that nature. So he was able to classify different demons in that aspect. There are a number of books that you can read if you're interested in it. One is called The Lesser Key of Solomon by Aleister Crowley. I think that's one of the easiest to read. It still is kind of difficult because of the language, but it's one of the easier ones to read. There is The Keys of Solomon the King, and then there's two other books that I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but It all dictates to sigils that were created to trap these demons and identify these demons. As he referred to them, as King Solomon referred to them, he referred to them as a spirit. If you're asking yourself what's the difference between a spirit and a demon, spirits can turn into demons, they can turn into poltergeists, they can turn into everything. It's all about time and things of that nature. Demons also can be created for through other means and things like that, but in this case, he perceived them as spirits as opposed to demons, and then later found out that they were minions of Lucifer. So he created all these binding sigils that you see later on. So this kind of brings me to King Payman, who is the entirety of the movie. King Payman is a knight, no, not a knight, a king of hell. He's a golden crowned king of hell. He is the second to be named as a golden crown, but he is the ninth to be named in the 72 archaic type of demon mythology in the ranking. So he's number 9 in ranking, but he's number 2 in having a gold crown. King Payman is said to he is said to be a man with a feminine face. He's said to be riding a camel with three heads, without their bodies, and he's also known to be with a staff of some sort. King Payman also has a legion of 200 spirits that follow him and that do his bidding. He has 2 main spirits, 2 main demons that actually are like his like main sergeants, for lack of a better way of saying it, or captains, his main captains. He's also known to be he is also known to be the most loyal demon to Lucifer. He's more willing to do Lucifer's bidding than anybody else of those demons. So he does have those 2. So to get back to the 2 demons that directly work under him, we actually have movies later on, like The Last Exorcism is one of them. It has to deal with Alabaz, definitely pronouncing that name wrong. But he has 2 main demons, and then these demons have people that work under him. So he has genuinely an army of demons that work under him. So that's kind of information based on his lore. King Payman is known, or at least as King Solomon wanted to say, King Payman is known to bring great riches to people. He's known to bring good familiars. He's known to bring things that are unknown to the known, bring earth to the world, to bring water, to be able to keep water at bay, to be able to do all of these things that involve knowledge and art. King Payman also is known within the mythology to have trumpets playing prior to him coming out of hell, or his presence. You'll hear a lot of trumpets, a lot of cymbals. He's very musically inclined. He's obsessed with the arts and creativity. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are now putting these pieces together when you think about the movie and certain structural ideas. So he's known because of that. And he's also known for arts, crafts, music, the trumpets. He's also known to only speak in tongues unless willed by the person who summoned him, calling him on the phone. He's like, hey, what's up? King Payman, come to my house. I need some money. No, they're not doing that. They're summoning him. So that is King Payman kind of in a nutshell. Now, if we think about what the lore is of King Payman and we think about what's going on in Hereditary, there's a number of things that are happening. You hear trumpets playing throughout the entire movie. You hear music. The whole family is artistically inclined except for the father. So Annie is artistically inclined where she's making these small houses. She's making these small, I can't say that they're small houses, but these small scenes based on real experiences of her life. So that's an example of something that involves King Payman and it being so forced into her life by her mother. There's a scene where Peter is playing the guitar in bed and he has a keyboard next to his bed. It inclines to him being musical. Charlie also was making dolls over and over again that were in the same structure of what King Payman would look like, which was a man with a crown on it. So you see that throughout the time of that happening. You also see Charlie making this click sound over and over and over and over again. And you hear it after she dies as well. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that King Payman only speaks in tongues unless he's willed by the person who summoned him to speak whatever language he needs to speak. He can speak all languages because he is the bringer of knowledge. So you have those scenes that do that. You also have a lot of these scenes where King Payman's sigil is all over the place. It's not his actual sigil. In the movie, it's like 3 humps. I'm using it on my shoulder. It's like 3 humps. If you think about Annie's necklace, it has like symbols on it, but it's actually supposed to be 4 kind of like humps, like 4 pieces as opposed to the 3. So that's something interesting to note. I think it was a very intentional thing that the director did. He did a lot of research, and there is a lot of information that he talks about not wanting to put the actual sigil up. Can actually show you what the sigil is. Hopefully it doesn't take me too long to find it in this book. But so that is part of it. When we are thinking about other aspects within the movie, we are seeing a lot of things play out that have to do with King Payman. It has to do with how wealthy they are. So there's been little things that are in there that has to do with that. I'm not finding it. It has to do with being wealthy in there and wealthy in their family. It has to do with not only the trumpets and the music and things like that. There's a scene at the very end of the movie also where Joan is talking to Peter's body, who's inhabited by King Payman, where she's like, "You're the 8th king of hell." Now there's lore that's kind of mixed with it. Sometimes it's claimed that he's the 8th. I've only seen one piece of information that said he was the 8th king of hell, when he's actually the 9th. Almost everything else says he's the 9th. So just an FYI. If you're wondering what good familiars are, check out Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. That's a great movie. It explains what familiars are very, very well, I think. TV show, it's not a movie. So where was I at? So those are different little things that happen within the movie that allude to King Payman happening. You have the sigil, you have the amount of money that the family has. Charlie's tree house is to the west, which is where you're supposed to praise him. You're supposed to praise him towards the west. There's all these triangles which is a part of the symbol within the mythology of King Payman and King Solomon, of that nature. And then there's also Charlie's treehouse is a triangle shape and things like that. I'm trying to think what else that I should talk about within King Payman, because there's so many things within the movie based on the mythology of King Payman that happen. You also see his sigils kind of carved into the blankets that they have. You have, so to talk about the 3-head thing. So the grandmother's head was taken off its body. Annie ends up being decapitated, and Charlie ends up being decapitated. So those are the 3 heads that are in sacrifice to King Payman, which is what you see him riding on the camel with. Which I think is like really interesting. There's a lot of stuff within the movie based on the lore that's really, really cool. But yeah, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And I hope you liked today's episode. Let me know below what crystals you got, if there was anything that I didn't really talk about within the lore, and I'll catch you guys next time. See you later.